My fiancé and I have been planning our wedding for over a year. We found the perfect venue, a beautiful estate with a garden for the ceremony and a grand hall for the reception. It was everything we wanted, and we booked it as soon as we saw it. The venue required a deposit up front, and we paid a significant portion of the remaining balance over time. The final payment was due next week, just before the wedding, but we had already budgeted for it. 2 weeks before the big day, we had our rehearsal. Our close family and friends were there, and we were running through everything with our coordinator. We were in the middle of discussing the seating arrangement when a woman walked in uninvited. She was dressed in an expensive-looking outfit and had an air of entitlement that I recognized instantly. I had no idea who she was, but she was acting like she owned the place. Without introducing herself, she announced that there had been a mistake. According to her, she had her wedding scheduled on the same day as ours, but her original venue burned down in an accident. Because of that, she expected us to give up our venue so she could have it instead. We were all confused. No one at the venue mentioned anything about double booking. My fiancé and I were stunned. This woman, a complete stranger, was demanding that we hand over our wedding just because something unfortunate happened to her. When we told her that wasn't possible, she got upset. She claimed we were being selfish and inconsiderate. She said she had more guests than we did and that her wedding was going to be much more extravagant, so it would be a waste for us to keep the venue for ourselves. She started walking around the venue, touching our decorations, muttering about how some of them didn't match her theme. At one point, she tried to pull down a banner we had set up. My best man stepped in front of her and told her to stop. Instead of backing off, she called him rude and said she had every right to be there. At that point, I was done. We asked security to remove her, and they didn't hesitate. She screamed at us, saying we were ruining her wedding and her planner had to drag her out. It was the most bizarre situation I had ever been in, but we laughed it off, thinking that was the end of it. The next day, we got a call from the venue owner. He said that Karen had come back after we left. She tried to bribe him into canceling our reservation and giving the date to her instead. She even offered to pay double what we were paying, but the owner refused. He told her it was unethical and that he wouldn't betray his clients. She didn't take that well. She got aggressive, yelling that he was making a huge mistake and that she would ruin his business. He told her she was no longer welcome at his venue, and to make sure she didn't try something like this again, he blacklisted her from every major wedding venue in town. When we heard this, we were relieved, but also a little shocked. This woman was so entitled that she was willing to destroy someone else's wedding just to get what she wanted. We have no idea what happened to her wedding, but as far as we're concerned, we're just happy we stood our ground. Now, I'm wondering if we should have just let her have it since we hadn't paid the full amount yet. Were we being unreasonable for not considering her situation? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. She didn't just ask. She demanded and then tried to take over your venue. Even if she was in a bad situation, that doesn't mean she has the right to ruin your wedding. The venue owner siding with you proves you weren't in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. The moment she brought her wedding planner and started rearranging things, she lost any sympathy she might have gotten. If she had come and politely asked, maybe there could have been a conversation, but she acted like she was entitled to your booking. You're not in the wrong. Her personal emergency does not create an obligation for you to fix it. You planned and paid for this event in advance. She should have looked for other solutions instead of trying to take yours. Next up. A few weeks ago, I went to a cute little cafe with my friend. It was one of those aesthetic places with pastel decor, flowers hanging from the ceiling, and those fancy lattes with heart-shaped foam art. The cafe had plenty of space, and it was well designed for accessibility, which isn't always the case, so I was excited to finally try it. My friend and I found a nice spot near the window, and I positioned myself at the table without blocking anything or being in anyone's way. We were enjoying our drinks when I noticed a woman at the next table getting more and more annoyed. She had a full setup: camera, ring light, even different cups of drinks she wasn't actually drinking. She looked like one of those social media influencers, the kind who films herself doing everything as if she's the main character in a movie. I didn't pay her much attention at first, but she kept glancing at me with a sour expression. Then she started whining loudly. She was complaining to whoever was filming her, saying that my wheelchair was ruining the clean aesthetic of her shot. My friend and I exchanged looks, but I just shrugged it off. People like this exist, and I'm used to it. But she wasn't done. She turned to me and told me to move. Not asked, told, like I was a piece of furniture that was in the way. I stared at her, and my friend immediately told her that wasn't happening. She rolled her eyes and said I was being selfish. Then she actually tried to explain how she had a vision for her content, and my wheelchair was messing up the background. At this point, a few other people in the cafe had started watching. I calmly told her that I couldn't just move because I literally cannot stand up. That's when she lost it. She started ranting about how I was ruining her work and demanded the manager kick me out. The cafe manager came over, looking annoyed already. As soon as she saw him, she turned on the fake influencer charm, talking about how she was just asking nicely and how she was trying to create beautiful content for her followers. Then she threw in that my wheelchair was taking away from the clean, minimalist aesthetic that she was aiming for. The manager shut her down immediately. He told her that if she had a problem, she could leave. He also pointed out that I wasn't blocking anything. I was a paying customer just like everyone else, and she was the one causing a scene. She did not take that well. She huffed and puffed about how unfair it was, but the manager refused to entertain her nonsense. She stomped back to her table, muttering to her camera about how rude and inconsiderate people could be. At that point, I figured it was over, and my friend and I went back to enjoying our drinks. But no, she wasn't done. A few minutes later, 2 police officers walked in. She had actually called the police on me. She told them that I was blocking an exit and creating a fire hazard. The officers looked over at me, looked at the completely clear pathway, and then back at her. One of them asked her to clarify exactly what the issue was, and she launched into this dramatic explanation about how I was preventing her from doing her job and how I was making the space unsafe. The officers weren't buying it. They asked the manager if I was causing any issues, and he immediately said no. Then they asked me if I wanted to press charges for harassment, which I declined, because honestly, I just wanted to finish my coffee in peace. When she realized they weren't going to kick me out, she completely lost it. She started screaming about how influencers deserve respect and how this is why small businesses fail. She was flailing her arms, knocking over one of her untouched drinks, and stomping her feet like a toddler in the middle of a meltdown. By now, multiple people in the cafe were filming. The manager told her she had to leave, and the officers escorted her out as she kept ranting about how unfair it all was. The best part? The videos went viral. People started sharing clips of her tantrum, and within days her social media was flooded with backlash. Then, brands started dropping her. She had sponsorships with a few companies, and they wanted nothing to do with her after seeing how she behaved. One by one, they released statements cutting ties with her. Meanwhile, I kept living my life as normal. The only difference is that now, every time I see an influencer setting up their camera in a cafe, I can't help but wonder if they're secretly wishing people in wheelchairs would disappear so they can have a clean aesthetic. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. The protagonist was simply enjoying a cafe visit when the influencer harassed her for existing in her wheelchair. The influencer's entitlement was outrageous. You're not in the wrong. Actions have consequences, and she got exactly what she deserved for her behavior. You're not in the wrong. You have every right to exist in public spaces just like anyone else. The influencer's entitlement is absurd. Next up, she looked frustrated, waving her hands while the staff member kept repeating something calmly. As I got closer, she turned to me with an irritated expression. That's when she said I needed to switch rooms because this one was supposed to be hers. I was confused but showed her my keycard, confirming that I was in the right place. She didn't care. She kept insisting that I must have booked the wrong room, that there had been a mistake, and that I should just go to the front desk and sort it out. I told her that wasn't happening, but she acted like I was being unreasonable. Then she actually tried to shove past me to enter. I was so shocked that I barely reacted before the hotel employee stepped in to stop her. She started raising her voice, accusing the staff of giving away her room, of being incompetent, of disrespecting her. The employee remained professional, but she wouldn't let it go. Turns out, she had only booked a regular room, but had spent the last hour harassing the front desk for a free upgrade. When they refused, she decided to try and take the first nice room she could find. Unfortunately for her, that room was mine. The hotel manager arrived, and she went into full meltdown mode, screaming at everyone about how unfair it was. Guests were peeking out of their rooms, watching the scene unfold. It didn't take long for security to escort her out, and the manager informed her that she was banned from the hotel. I went into my room, locked the door, and sat down to process everything. What should have been a simple check-in turned into absolute chaos because some entitled woman thought she could force her way into an upgrade. At least the hotel handled it well, but I still can't believe someone would go that far just to get a better room for free. You're not in the wrong. You were simply checking into your assigned room, and this woman had no right to demand it from you. Her entitlement was absurd. Next up. No one is in the wrong. This doesn't apply since she was clearly the problem, while you and the staff handled things appropriately. Next up. I, 33M, work at an office alongside my wife, 31F, but we always keep things professional. We don't flaunt our relationship, and most people don't even realize we're married. It has never been an issue, until Karen, a new coworker, started working with us. Karen developed an obvious crush on me. At first, it was just small things: lingering glances, laughing a little too hard at my jokes, finding excuses to be near me. I brushed it off as friendly behavior, but it quickly escalated. She would get visibly annoyed when other women talked to me and found reasons to interrupt conversations I was having with colleagues. My wife and I found it strange, but since we never talked about our marriage at work, Karen had no idea she was getting jealous of my own wife. One day, my wife and I were having a quick discussion about a project when she briefly touched my arm. Karen happened to see it and immediately stormed off. I didn't think much of it until HR called us in later that day. Apparently, Karen had filed a complaint against my wife, accusing her of inappropriate flirting with me in the workplace. She framed it as if my wife was being unprofessional and making advances on a taken man. Except, of course, I wasn't taken in the way she thought. When HR sat us down, we simply handed over our marriage certificates. The look on Karen's face when she realized she had just reported a married couple was priceless. But instead of being embarrassed or apologizing, She flipped out. She accused my wife of deliberately hiding our relationship to trick her, as if my wife owed her an explanation for being married to me. HR was not amused. They gave Karen a warning for making false accusations and advised her to remain professional. That should have been the end of it, but Karen wouldn't let it go. She made passive-aggressive comments, glared at my wife anytime we interacted, and tried to rally other coworkers against us by spreading rumors. It got to the point where HR had to intervene again, and this time they decided she was creating a hostile work environment. She was fired shortly after for harassment. My wife and I left work that day and went out for celebratory drinks. What should have been a simple workplace situation turned into full-blown chaos because Karen had convinced herself of something that was never real. At least HR handled it well, but the whole experience was beyond ridiculous. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. You and your wife were just minding your business and keeping things professional. Karen had no right to act possessive over you. You're in the wrong for Karen. She filed a baseless HR complaint, acted entitled, and created a toxic workplace. Getting fired was entirely her fault. Everyone sucks here. If you had somehow misled Karen intentionally, maybe, but there's no indication that happened.